The warning alarm screamed through every corridor of Kepler Station. Commander Yelton pressed his blue-scaled hand against the cold metal wall and felt the vibrations from the enemy ships hammering their shields. Each blast sent tremors through the massive mining station that had been home to 50,000 Zilani refugees for the past 3 years. Shield. Strength down to 30%, called out Lieutenant Vex from her position at the defense console. Her voice cracked with fear as she watched the numbers drop on her screen. The main generators are overloading. We cannot take much more of this. Yelton walked to the large window that looked out into space. The sight made his heart sink. Hundreds of dark ships surrounded Kepler Station like hungry predators. The Korthak vessels looked like giant insects made of metal and bone. Their hulls pulsed with sick green light and tentacles writhed along their sides. These were the ships that had destroyed a dozen worlds in the past year. Now they had come for the Zilani. Sir, incoming message from the lead Korthak ship, reported Communications Officer Zen. His hands shook as he worked his controls. Put it through, Yelton ordered. A horrible voice filled the command center. It sounded like grinding metal mixed with screams. People of Kepler Station, you will surrender now. We will harvest your life energy to feed our ships. Those who resist will die slowly. Those who surrender will die quickly. You have 1 hour to decide. The communication ended, leaving only the sound of alarms and distant explosions. Yelton had been a soldier for 40 years. He had fought in the wars that destroyed his home planet. He had led his people across the galaxy to find safety in this remote corner of space. He was tired of running, tired of watching his people suffer, but he also knew they had no choice. Status report, he commanded. We have 12 patrol ships operational, said Lieutenant Vex. They are small craft with basic weapons. The Korthak fleet has over 200 warships. Our station weapons are old mining lasers, not military grade. We also have 40,000 civilians in the residential sectors and 10,000 workers in the mines. Yelton closed his eyes. 40 years of military experience told him this was hopeless. The Korthak were known throughout the galaxy as destroyers. They did not take prisoners. They did not show mercy. They consumed entire worlds and left nothing behind but empty husks floating in space. Send out distress calls on all frequencies, he ordered. Emergency channels, military channels, civilian channels, everything we have. Sir, we have been sending distress calls for 3 days, Zen replied. The Galactic Defense Coalition received our messages. They said they will send help. But it will take 3 weeks for their nearest fleet to reach us. The other governments say this sector is too remote and not worth defending. 3 weeks. They would all be dead in 3 hours. Keep sending the calls, Yelton said. Someone might hear us. Someone might care enough to help. The station shook again as more Korthak weapons hit their shields. Lights flickered in the command center. Through the window, Yelton could see small fighter craft launching from the enemy ships. They moved like deadly insects, swarming toward the station. Shield failure in Sector 7, reported Lieutenant Vex. Enemy boarding pods are attaching to the outer hull. Yelton picked up his energy rifle from the weapons rack. It was an old model, but it still worked. Around the command center, his officers were checking their own weapons. They all knew what came next. All security teams to defensive positions, he announced over the station comm system. All civilians are to remain in their quarters with emergency life support active. This is not a drill. The lights went out for a moment, then came back on dim emergency power. The main shields had failed. Yelton could hear the sound of metal being cut somewhere in the distance. The Korthak were already inside. Sir, we are getting reports from all over the station, said Lieutenant Vex. 20 boarding sites. The security teams are fighting back, but the Korthak soldiers are too strong. They have energy weapons that cut through our armor like paper. Yelton nodded. The Korthak were not just cruel, they were also efficient killers. Their soldiers were twice the size of Zilani, with thick armor-plated skin and claws that could rip through metal. Worse, they felt no pain and feared nothing. How long until they reach the civilian sectors? He asked. Maybe 30 minutes, sir. The security teams are slowing them down but not stopping them. 30 minutes. Yelton thought about the families hiding in their small apartments. Children who had never known a safe home. Parents who had sacrificed everything to bring their families to this remote station. All of them depending on him to protect them. Zen, any response to our distress calls? He asked. The communications officer shook his head sadly. Nothing, sir. The automated systems keep broadcasting, but no one is answering. Through the window, Yeltan watched more Korthak ships moving closer. Some of them were enormous, the size of small moons. Those were the harvester ships. Once they attached to the station, they would begin draining the life from everyone inside. The process took days and was incredibly painful. "Sir, enemy soldiers have reached level 15, reported Vex. They are moving toward the residential areas." Yeltan made a decision. He turned to his officers. These brave Zilani who had followed him across the galaxy and served without complaint in this forgotten outpost. "I want everyone to know," he said quietly. "It has been an honor to serve with you. You are the finest officers I have ever commanded. We may not be able to save everyone, but we can make sure the Korthak pay a price for this victory." His officers straightened their shoulders and gripped their weapons tighter. They were afraid, but they were not going to run. The station shook again, harder this time. More boarding pods were attaching. The Korthak were bringing in their heavy assault troops now. These were creatures the size of vehicles with weapons built into their arms. "Sir, incoming transmission," said Zen suddenly. "Another demand for surrender?" Yeltan asked. "No, sir, this is different. It is very faint, coming from deep space. Someone is responding to our distress call." Yeltan felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe one of the nearby colonies had sent help. Maybe a merchant ship with some weapons had decided to try. "Put it through," he ordered. The speakers crackled with static. Then a voice came through. It was speaking in the common trade language with an accent Yeltan had never heard before. "Kepler Station, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the battleship Retribution's Edge. We received your distress call. Hold your position. Help is coming." Yeltan stared at the communication console. A battleship? Out here in the void? He had never heard of this ship or this Captain Chen. Zen asked them their estimated time of arrival and fleet strength. But before Zen could respond, the transmission ended. Static filled the speakers again. "Sir, I lost the signal," Zen reported. They were very far away. The transmission was breaking up. One ship, somewhere in the darkness between the stars, one ship was coming to help them. Yeltan looked out at the hundreds of Korthak vessels and felt his heart sink again. Whoever this Captain Chen was, she was flying to her death, and she would not arrive in time to save anyone. "All stations continue defensive operations," he ordered. "Make every shot count." The battle for Kepler Station had begun. Deep in the cold emptiness between star systems, the human battleship Retribution's Edge drifted through space like a sleeping giant. The ship was old, very old. Its hull bore the scars of 100 battles fought in wars that most of the galaxy had forgotten. Patches of different colored metal showed where repair crews had fixed damage over the centuries. Captain Sarah Chen sat in her command chair, reading reports on a tablet. The bridge around her was dimly lit to save power. Only essential systems were running. Most of the crew was asleep in their quarters. This far from any star, there was little to do but wait and watch the endless darkness. "Captain," called Lieutenant Zhao from the communication station, "I am picking up a distress signal." Chen looked up from her tablet. Distress signals were rare out here in the void. Most ships avoided this empty region of space. "What kind of signal, Lieutenant?" "Emergency broadcast, ma'am." "Multiple frequencies. Someone is in serious trouble." Zhao worked her controls, filtering out the static. "It is coming from the Kepler system, about 6 light years from our current position." Chen stood and walked to the communication station. She had been captain of this old battleship for 12 years. Before that, her father had commanded the ship. Before him, her grandfather. The Retribution's Edge had been in the Chen family for 3 generations. "Play the signal," she ordered. The bridge speakers crackled with static. Then a desperate voice came through. It was speaking in the common trade language with the accent of the Zilani people. "This is Commander Yeltan of Kepler Station. We are under attack by Korthak forces. 50,000 civilians need immediate evacuation. We have minimal defenses and cannot hold out much longer. Please, anyone who receives this message, we need help." The signal repeated several times, then faded into static. Chen stared at the speakers. The Korthak. She knew that name well. Every human military officer did. They were one of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They destroyed worlds for food and enslaved entire populations. "Lieutenant, how old is that signal?" she asked. "Based on the transmission delay, about 72 hours, Captain. The attack is happening right now." Chen turned to the navigation station. "Petty Officer Santos, plot a course to the Kepler system. Maximum burn." Santos looked surprised. "Captain, that will put us in the middle of a Korthak fleet." Sensor readings show at least 200 enemy ships. I heard the distress call too, Santos. Plot the course. Yes, ma'am. Chen walked to the center of the bridge and pressed a button on her command console. Throughout the ship, speakers activated. All hands, this is the captain. General quarters. All hands to battle stations. We have a mission. Alarm lights began flashing red throughout the ship. In the corridors, crew members ran to their positions. The Retribution's Edge had only 847 people aboard. Once ships like this carried 3,000. But that was before the budget cuts, before Earth decided the outer rim was not important anymore. Chief Engineer Marcus Torres arrived on the bridge, still pulling on his uniform jacket. He was a big man with graying hair and hands stained with engine grease. "Captain, what is our situation?" he asked. "Rescue mission, Marcus. 50,000 civilians under attack by Korthak forces. How are our engines?" Torres scratched his beard. "The main drive is running at 80% efficiency. We can push it to maximum burn, but it will stress the system." "How far are we going?" 6 light years. And we need to get there fast. I can give you maximum speed for 18 hours. After that, we will need to stop for repairs or risk a core breach." Chen nodded. "Do it. What about our weapons?" "Plasma torpedoes are at 60% capacity. Railguns are operational, but we are low on ammunition. The main cannon needs a new focusing crystal, but it will still fire. Shields are patched with salvaged parts, but they will hold." It was not good news, but it was what they had. The Retribution's Edge was old and undermanned, but the crew was experienced. They had fought pirates, smugglers, and worse in the lawless regions of space. "Atlas, are you online?" Chen called out. A calm artificial voice responded from speakers around the bridge. "Yes, Captain. All systems are functional, though running on backup processors." Atlas was the ship's artificial intelligence. Like everything else on the Retribution's Edge, it was old but reliable. The AI had been helping human crews fight battles for over 200 years. "Atlas, analyze the tactical situation at Kepler Station. What are we facing? Based on the distress signal and known Korthak fleet compositions, you will be engaging approximately 200 enemy vessels. Enemy ships include heavy cruisers, destroyers, fighter squadrons, and at least 3 harvester ships. Our probability of survival in direct combat is less than 5%. The bridge fell silent. Everyone had known the odds were bad, but hearing it stated so clearly made it real. Lieutenant Zhao spoke quietly. "Captain, maybe we should call for backup. The Galactic Defense Coalition has fleets in nearby sectors." Chen looked at her young communications officer. Zhao was smart and capable, but she had not seen as much of the galaxy as Chen had. "Lieutenant, how long would it take for GDC forces to reach Kepler Station?" "At least 3 weeks, ma'am." "And how long do you think those civilians have?" Zhao looked down at her console. "A few hours at most." Chen walked to the main view screen, which showed the starfield ahead of them. Somewhere in that darkness, 50,000 people were fighting for their lives. They had sent out a desperate call for help, not knowing if anyone would hear or care. "I have been patrolling the outer rim for 12 years, Chen said to her crew. "I have seen what the Korthak do to civilian populations. They do not take prisoners. They do not show mercy. If we do not help those people, no one will." She turned back to her officers. "I will not order anyone to come with me on this mission. The odds are terrible. Most of us will probably die. Anyone who wants to transfer to an escape pod can do so now." The bridge crew looked at each other. Then one by one they turned back to their stations. "We are with you, Captain," said Lieutenant Zhao. Torres cracked his knuckles. "Those engine modifications I have been wanting to try? Now seems like a good time." Santos grinned from the navigation station. "I always wanted to see what this old ship could do in a real fight." Chen felt a surge of pride. This was why she loved her crew. They were volunteers, every one of them. They could have transferred to safer assignments long ago. Instead, they chose to stay out here in the darkness, protecting people who would never know their names. "Atlas, calculate our best approach to the Kepler system. I want to hit them where they do not expect us." "Working, Captain. I recommend using the gas giant's gravity well to mask our approach. We can slingshot around the planet and attack from the opposite side of their formation." "Good. What about communications? Can we contact the station when we arrive?" "Negative. Korthak forces will be jamming all frequencies. We will be going in blind," Chen nodded. It was what she had expected. The Korthak were efficient in their cruelty. "All stations prepare for maximum burn. We are going to push this old ship harder than she has ever been pushed before. If she breaks apart, at least we will be heading in the right direction. The Retribution's edge began to accelerate toward the Kepler system. Its engines howled through space, leaving a trail of superheated plasma behind it. In the depths of the ship, Torres and his engineering teams worked frantically to keep the ancient systems from overloading. Chen remained on the bridge, watching the stars slowly shift as they approached light speed. In 18 hours, they would arrive at Kepler Station. 847 humans against 200 Korthak warships. She thought about her grandfather, who had commanded this ship during the colony wars. He had faced impossible odds too, and somehow found a way to win. Chen hoped she had inherited some of his tactical genius along with his ship. "Captain," said Atlas quietly, "I have been analyzing Korthak fleet tactics. I believe I have identified a weakness." Chen smiled grimly. "Tell me." The Retribution's edge dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system. Captain Chen gripped her command chair as the ship shuddered from the transition. On the main view screen she could see the gas giant Kepler Prime, a massive blue-green world surrounded by glowing rings of ice and rock. "Sensors. Report," she ordered. Lieutenant Rodriguez, the ship's science officer, worked frantically at his station. "Captain, I am reading massive energy signatures near the mining station. The Korthak fleet is enormous. I count over 200 ships, including 3 harvester vessels." Chen studied the tactical display. The enemy fleet surrounded Kepler Station like a pack of wolves. The station's shields were flickering and failing. Small explosions bloomed along its hull where Korthak weapons struck home. "Any sign of resistance from the station?" she asked. "Minimal, Captain. I detect a few patrol ships, but they are heavily outgunned. The station's weapons appear to be mining lasers, not military grade." Through the view screen, Chen could see the Korthak ships more clearly now. They were horrible things, looking more like living creatures than machines. Their hulls pulsed with sick green light, and organic tentacles writhed along their sides. These were ships that fed on death and destruction. "Atlas, tactical analysis," Chen called out. The ship's AI responded immediately. "Captain, direct assault against the main fleet would result in our destruction within minutes. However, I have identified the Korthak command structure. They use a hive mind system controlled from their flagship, a massive biocruiser at the center of their formation. What happens if we destroy the flagship? Korthak forces would lose coordination. Individual ships would likely turn on each other as their lesser commanders compete for control. It is their greatest strength and their greatest weakness." Chen nodded. She had studied Korthak tactics during her years at the military academy. They were incredibly effective when working together, but without central command they became chaotic and unpredictable. "The problem is getting close enough to the flagship," she said. "It is protected by dozens of escort vessels." Chief Torres spoke up from his position near the engineering console. "Captain, we could use the gas giant's gravity well. Slingshot around the planet and hit them from behind. They would not expect an attack from that direction." Chen looked at the tactical display again. It was dangerous. The ship would have to survive passage through Kepler Prime's radiation belt and magnetic field. But it might be their only chance. "How close can we get to the planet without being detected?" she asked. "The gas giant's magnetic field will scramble their sensors," Rodriguez reported. "We could approach from the dark side and use the planet's mass to hide our energy signature." "Do it. Santos, plot a slingshot course around Kepler Prime. Maximum velocity. I want to hit that flagship before they know we are here." The Retribution's edge changed course, diving toward the massive gas giant. As they approached, the ship began to shake from gravitational forces. The hull groaned under the stress and several warning lights flashed on the bridge. "Hull integrity holding," reported Torres. "But we are pushing the structural limits." Chen watched the planet grow larger on the view screen. Kepler Prime was beautiful in a deadly way. Storms the size of Earth raged across its surface, and lightning bolts hundreds of miles long flickered through its atmosphere. "Entering the radiation belt," announced Rodriguez. "All non-essential systems shutting down to prevent damage." The bridge lights dimmed as power was diverted to shields and structural integrity. The ship flew deeper into the planet's magnetic field, using the charged particles and radiation to mask their approach. "Time to emergence?" Chen asked. 4 minutes, Captain," Santos replied. "We will come out directly behind the Korthak flagship at maximum velocity." Chen activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. In 4 minutes, we will engage the enemy. This is what we trained for." This is why we are here. Make every shot count. Throughout the ship, the crew prepared for battle. In the weapons bays, technicians loaded the last of their plasma torpedoes. Marines checked their equipment in case boarding became necessary. In engineering, Torres and his team stood ready to manage battle damage. Emerging from the planet's shadow in 30 seconds, Santos announced. Chen stood up from her command chair. This was the moment that would decide everything. Either they would destroy the Korthak command ship and save 50,000 lives, or they would die in the attempt. All weapons, prepare to fire, target the flagship's central core. The Retribution's edge burst from behind Kepler Prime like a missile. The massive gas giant had accelerated them to incredible speed. They were moving so fast that the Korthak sensors could not track them properly. The enemy flagship was enormous, easily 10 times the size of the human battleship. Its biomechanical hull pulsed with veins of green energy. Weapon ports along its sides were already turning to track the approaching threat. Fire all weapons, Chen shouted. The Retribution's edge unleashed everything it had. Plasma torpedoes streaked toward the target, their white-hot trails lighting up space. Railgun rounds followed, traveling at a significant fraction of light speed. The main cannon charged up and fired a devastating beam of concentrated energy. The weapons struck the Korthak flagship in a concentrated barrage. Its bioarmor began to crack and burn. Green fluid leaked from the wounds like blood, but the massive ship was still functional, still dangerous. Direct hit but minimal damage, reported the weapons officer. That armor is incredibly thick. The Korthak flagship was beginning to turn, bringing its own massive weapons to bear. Chen could see energy building up in weapons that could destroy her ship with a single shot. Torres, I need more speed, she called out. Captain, the engines are already at maximum burn. We cannot go any faster. Chen made a decision that surprised everyone on the bridge. Instead of trying to escape or maneuver for another attack, she pointed the ship directly at the enemy flagship. All hands, brace for impact. We are going to ram them. The bridge crew stared at her in shock. The Retribution's edge was heavily armored, but ramming a ship 10 times their size was suicide. Captain, the collision will destroy both ships, Atlas pointed out. I know, Chen replied calmly, but it will also eliminate their command structure. Sometimes you have to sacrifice the peace to win the game. The Retribution's edge accelerated toward the Korthak flagship. Its reinforced prow was designed for exactly this kind of attack, though it had never been used this way before. The enemy ship tried to turn away, but it was too massive to change course quickly. Impact in 10 seconds, Santos announced. Chen gripped her command chair and watched the enemy ship grow larger on the view screen. She thought about her grandfather, who had died in a similar ramming attack during the colony wars. She thought about the 50,000 civilians counting on them to succeed. The Retribution's edge struck the Korthak flagship like a spear. Its armored prow punched through the biomechanical hull and penetrated deep into the ship's core. The impact sent shockwaves through both vessels. Explosions bloomed along the flagship's hull as its internal systems failed. But the human ship had been built to survive such impacts. Its internal structure held together even as the outer hull buckled and cracked. Emergency bulkheads sealed off the damaged sections and backup systems came online. On the bridge, Chen picked herself up from the floor. Half the consoles were sparking, and the main view screen had gone dark. But they were still alive and, more importantly, still fighting. Damage report, she called out. Forward sections are heavily damaged, Torres reported. We have lost main power to weapons, but the reactor is stable and life support is functioning. What about the enemy flagship? Rodriguez checked his sensors. It is breaking apart, Captain. We penetrated their core structure. They are losing power throughout the ship. On the secondary view screen, Chen could see the results of their attack. The massive Korthak flagship was splitting in half, green fire bleeding from its wounds. But more importantly, the rest of the enemy fleet was beginning to change behavior. Captain, the Korthak ships are turning on each other, Rodriguez reported excitedly. Without central command, they are fighting among themselves. Chen allowed herself a small smile. The plan had worked, but their victory would be short-lived if they could not escape. Santos, can we maneuver? Maneuvering thrusters are operational, but we have lost main engine power. We are drifting toward Kepler Station. Good. Maybe we can still help with the evacuation, but even as she spoke, Chen could see more Korthak ships breaking away from the chaotic fleet battle and heading toward their damaged vessel. The Retribution's edge had struck a devastating blow, but the fight was far from over. All remaining weapons prepare to fire, she ordered. We are not done yet. The Retribution's edge drifted through space like a wounded animal, trailing debris and atmosphere from dozens of hull breaches. Emergency lights flickered throughout the ship as damage control teams raced to seal the worst leaks. Captain Chen gripped her command chair as another Korthak plasma blast struck their failing shields. Shield Generator 3 is offline, reported Chief Torres from engineering. His voice was strained as he worked to keep their systems functional. We have lost main power to 2 weapons batteries. The reactor is running on backup cooling systems. Chen watched the tactical display as 5 Korthak destroyers moved in for the kill. Behind them, the enemy fleet was still fighting among themselves. But these ships had broken away to finish off the human vessel that had caused so much damage. How much longer can we maintain shields? She asked. Maybe 10 minutes, Captain. After that, we are defenseless. 10 minutes. Chen looked around the bridge at her crew. Half the consoles were dark or sparking. Lieutenant Rodriguez had a cut on his forehead from flying debris. Petty Officer Santos was manually operating the navigation controls because the main computer was damaged. Captain, incoming message from Kepler Station, announced Lieutenant Zhao. Put it through. Commander Yeltan's voice came through the speakers, filled with desperate gratitude. Human ship, this is Kepler Station. We cannot believe you came for us. Our sensors show you are heavily damaged. Can we assist with repairs? Chen almost smiled despite their desperate situation. The Zelani commander was offering to help them when his own station was falling apart. Kepler Station, this is Captain Chen. We appreciate the offer, but you need to focus on evacuating your civilians. We will hold off the remaining Korthak ships as long as possible. Captain, we have prepared our evacuation ships, but they cannot launch while those destroyers are attacking. You have already done more than anyone could ask. Chen looked at the tactical display again. The 5 Korthak ships were moving into attack formation. Each one was twice the size of her damaged battleship. In a fair fight, they would destroy the Retribution's edge in minutes, but Chen had not survived 12 years in the Outer Rim by fighting fair. Atlas, what is the status of our reactor core? She asked the ship's AI. The main reactor is stable but running at maximum output to maintain shields and life support. Why do you ask, Captain? Can we overload it? The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood what she was suggesting. Overloading the reactor would turn their ship into a massive bomb. It would destroy anything within several kilometers. Captain, Torres said quietly, if we overload the reactor, there will be no time for evacuation. The crew compartments are too damaged for the escape pods to function properly. Chen nodded. She had already considered that. Most of their escape pods had been destroyed in the ramming attack. The few that remained were blocked by debris or damaged beyond use. I know, Marcus, but if we do not stop those destroyers, 50,000 civilians will die. Our mission was to protect them, not to save ourselves. She activated the ship-wide communication system. Throughout the Retribution's edge, crew members stopped what they were doing to listen to their captain's voice. All hands, this is Captain Chen. Our ship is dying and we do not have enough escape pods for everyone. The enemy ships closing on our position will destroy Kepler Station if we do not stop them. I am going to overload our reactor and ram the lead destroyer. This will destroy our ship, but it will also eliminate the threat to the civilians. She paused, looking around the bridge at her officers. I will not order anyone to stay. Those who can reach the functioning escape pods should do so now. But someone needs to remain on the bridge to pilot the ship during its final approach. The bridge crew looked at each other. Chen expected them to head for the escape pods. They were young, with their whole lives ahead of them. They had already done more than enough. Instead, Lieutenant Zhao returned to her communication station. Captain, I am staying. Someone needs to maintain contact with the station. Santos checked his navigation controls. I am staying too. You will need someone to plot the approach course. Rodriguez wiped blood from his forehead and resumed his position at the science station. The sensor array needs constant adjustment. I will stay. One by one, the entire bridge crew took their positions. Chen felt her throat tighten with emotion. These brave men and women were choosing to die with their ship rather than abandon their duty. Torres, report to the reactor room, she ordered. I need you to manually override the safety systems. The chief engineer nodded grimly. Understood, Captain. It will take about 5 minutes to bypass all the safeguards. As Torres left the bridge, Chen began preparations for their final attack. On the view screen, she could see the Korthak destroyers growing larger as they approached. Their biomechanical hulls pulsed with malevolent energy. and their weapons were charging for another barrage. Santos, plot an intercept course with the lead destroyer. Full impulse power. Course plotted, Captain. But without main engines, we can only achieve about 60% of normal speed. It will have to be enough. Throughout the ship, the remaining crew members said their final goodbyes. In the medical bay, Dr. Rodriguez treated wounded sailors while preparing for the inevitable. In the weapons bays, technicians made sure the remaining guns would fire until the very end. In the corridors, Marines took defensive positions in case the enemy tried to board. Captain, I have emergency power to the main engines, Torres reported from engineering. I am bypassing the reactor safeties now. Once I start the overload sequence, we will have approximately 8 minutes before the explosion. Understood. Begin the sequence. Deep in the ship's core, Torres worked with desperate precision. He disabled one safety system after another, allowing the reactor to build up energy far beyond its normal limits. The temperature in the reactor room climbed steadily as radiation alarms screamed their warnings. Overload sequence initiated, Torres announced. 7 minutes to detonation. The Retribution's edge began to accelerate toward the enemy formation. Its damaged engines howled with effort as they pushed the ship toward its final battle. On the bridge, Chen watched the distance close between them and the lead destroyer. Captain, the Korthak ships are changing course, Rodriguez reported. They seem to realize what we are doing. Too late, Chen replied. We have too much momentum. They cannot avoid us now. The enemy ships began firing everything they had at the approaching human vessel. Plasma bolts and energy beams hammered the Retribution's edge, tearing away armor and destroying what remained of their weapons. But the ship continued forward, driven by the determination of its crew. 5 minutes to detonation, Torres announced. His voice was calm despite the fact that he was standing next to a reactor that would soon explode with the force of a small star. All stations maintain course and speed, Chen ordered. Do not let them stop us. One of the Korthak destroyers tried to ram them, hoping to knock the human ship off course. But Santos adjusted their trajectory at the last second, and the alien vessel missed by mere meters. The Korthak ship's biomechanical hull scraped against their armor, leaving green acid burns along their side. 3 minutes to detonation. Chen could see individual details on the lead destroyer now. Its hull was covered with weapon ports and sensor arrays. Organic tentacles writhed along its sides like massive worms. It was a ship designed for destruction and death. 2 minutes to detonation. The bridge shook as more enemy fire struck them. The main view screen cracked and sparks flew from damaged consoles. But the crew remained at their posts, determined to see their mission through to the end. 1 minute to detonation. Chen opened a communication channel to Kepler Station. Commander Yeltan, this is Captain Chen. In 60 seconds, there will be a large explosion. Use that opportunity to launch your evacuation ships. Get your people to safety. Captain Chen. Yeltan's voice was thick with emotion. We will never forget what you have done for us. Your sacrifice will be remembered forever. 30 seconds to detonation. The lead Korthak destroyer filled the entire view screen now. Chen could see its bridge where alien commanders were probably screaming orders to their crew. They knew what was coming, but there was nothing they could do to stop it. 10 seconds. Chen looked around the bridge one last time at her brave crew. It has been an honor to serve with all of you. The Retribution's edge struck the Korthak destroyer at the exact moment its reactor exploded. The blast was visible from the other side of the star system, a brilliant white flash that briefly outshone the local sun. When the light faded, both ships were gone, replaced by an expanding cloud of superheated gas and debris. But the sacrifice had accomplished its goal. The remaining Korthak ships, already fighting among themselves after losing their command structure, scattered in panic. Within hours, Kepler Station was able to launch its evacuation ships and ferry all 50,000 civilians to safety. Commander Yeltan personally led the search and rescue operation, hoping to find survivors from the human ship. They found a few escape pods containing 89 crew members who had managed to launch before the final attack. Among them was Chief Torres, badly injured but alive. But Captain Sarah Chen and most of her crew had chosen to stay with their ship to the very end. They had given their lives to save people they had never met. In a corner of space, most of the 6 months after the Battle of Kepler Station, Commander Yeltan stood before a massive memorial wall in the station's main plaza. 50,000 names were carved into the black stone, representing every civilian who had been saved by the sacrifice of the human crew. At the center of the memorial, in letters of gold, were the names of the 847 crew members of the Retribution's Edge who had given their lives. The plaza was busy with activity. Zilani families walked past, children playing games while their parents conducted business. New arrivals from across the galaxy had come to settle at Kepler Station, drawn by the story of courage and sacrifice that had made this place famous throughout known space. "Commander," said Lieutenant Vex, approaching with a data pad in her hands, "the morning reports are ready for your review." Yeltan took the pad but continued to stare at the memorial. In the center, above all the other names, was the inscription he had personally chosen. Captain Sarah Chen and the crew of the Retribution's Edge. They came when no one else would. "Any word from the Galactic Defense Coalition?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Fleet Admiral Corvus will arrive tomorrow with a full battle group. They want to establish a permanent base here to protect the Outer Rim colonies." Yeltan almost smiled. 6 months ago, the GDC had said this sector was too remote and unimportant to defend. Now they were rushing to establish a presence here, embarrassed by the story of how a single human ship had done what their entire fleet could not. "What about the memorial broadcast?" he asked. "It continues on all frequencies, sir. Captain Chen's final transmission has been heard by billions of beings across the galaxy. The response has been overwhelming." That had been Yeltan's idea. Every day at exactly noon, Kepler Station broadcast the final message from the Retribution's Edge on every available frequency. The transmission was simple but powerful. "When darkness comes for the innocent, we stand between them and the void. Not because we must, but because we can." The words had become a rallying cry for beings across the galaxy who believed in protecting the weak and standing up to bullies like the Korthak. "Sir, there is something else," Vex said quietly. "We have received another message from Earth." Yeltan turned to look at his aide. "What kind of message?" "Earth Command wants to send a delegation to study the battle records. They also want to interview the survivors." Chief Torres was still recovering in the station's medical center. The human engineer had suffered severe radiation poisoning during the reactor overload, but the Zilani doctors had saved his life. The other 88 survivors were gradually returning to Earth aboard passenger ships, carrying with them stories that would inspire a new generation of human space crews. "Tell Earth Command they are welcome," Yeltan said. "But they should know that Chief Torres has already told his story to every reporter in the galaxy. The whole universe knows what happened here, and it was true. The story of the Retribution's Edge had spread far beyond the Outer Rim. On worlds throughout known space, beings told their children about the human ship that had fought impossible odds to save strangers. Military academies included the Battle of Kepler Station in their required studies. Even species that had never heard of humans before now spoke of human courage as something special and rare. The political effects had been immediate and dramatic. Dozens of species had formed mutual defense pacts inspired by the example of the human crew. The Outer Rim Defense Alliance had been established just 3 months after the battle, with Kepler Station as its headquarters. "Commander, you have a visitor," announced Security Chief Zan over the communication system. Yeltan looked around the plaza and saw a familiar figure approaching. It was Captain Maria Santos, the younger sister of Petty Officer Santos, who had died on the bridge of the Retribution's Edge. She wore the uniform of Earth Fleet and carried herself with the same quiet confidence her brother had shown. "Commander Yeltan," she said, offering a formal salute. "I am Captain Santos of the Earth vessel Defiance. I bring greetings from Earth Command and the families of the crew." Yeltan returned the salute. He had been expecting this visit. Earth had finally decided to take the Outer Rim seriously, and they were sending their best ships and crews to establish a permanent presence. "Welcome to Kepler Station, Captain. Your brother served with honor aboard the Retribution's Edge. His sacrifice will never be forgotten." Maria Santos nodded, her eyes moving to the memorial wall. "Commander, I want you to know that Earth Fleet has made some changes since the battle. We are establishing new patrol routes in the Outer Rim. No distress call will go unanswered again." "That is good to hear, Captain. But tell me, what brings you here specifically?" Santos smiled. "The Defiance is the first ship of a new class of vessels. We call them the Chen-class battleships, named after Captain Sarah Chen. They are designed specifically for long-range patrol and rescue operations in remote sectors." Yeltan felt a surge of emotion. The humans were naming their new ships after the captain who had saved his people. It was a fitting tribute to her memory. There is something else, Santos continued. Earth Fleet has established a new award for exceptional courage in the service of others. It is called the Retribution Medal, and it will be given to crews who risk everything to save lives. Your people honor their heroes well, Yeltan said. We try to, Commander, but I should mention that the first Retribution Medal was awarded posthumously to a Zalani officer. You. Yeltan stared at her in surprise. I do not understand. Your defense of Kepler Station inspired Earth Command to investigate their own policies. They realized that courage and sacrifice are not limited to any single species. The medal will be awarded to anyone, human or alien, who demonstrates the same spirit that Captain Chen and her crew showed here. Lieutenant Vex stepped forward with another data pad. Commander, we are receiving multiple incoming signals. Ships are requesting permission to dock. Yeltan looked at the readings. 3 vessels were approaching the station. A Zalani medical ship, a Terran cargo freighter, and a Kandorian patrol craft. All 3 species had been traditional enemies before the Battle of Kepler Station. Now they worked together in the Outer Rim Defense Alliance. Grant them docking permission, he ordered. All vessels are welcome at Kepler Station. As the ships approached, Yeltan thought about how much had changed in just 6 months. The Outer Rim was no longer a forgotten wasteland where the strong preyed on the weak. It had become a symbol of cooperation and mutual defense. Captain Santos, he said, would you like to visit the tactical center? We have preserved all the sensor recordings from the battle. Many officers come here to study Captain Chen's tactics. I would be honored, Commander. As they walked through the station, Yeltan pointed out the changes that had been made since the battle. The residential areas had been expanded to accommodate new settlers. The docking bays had been enlarged to handle the increased traffic. Most importantly, a new defense grid had been installed, staffed by crews from a dozen different species. Commander, may I ask you something? Santos said as they entered the tactical center. Of course. Do you really think my brother and the others knew they were going to die when they stayed on the bridge? Yeltan considered the question carefully. He had studied the final transmissions from the Retribution's Edge many times. The crew had known exactly what they were doing. Captain, your brother and his shipmates made a choice. They could have tried to save themselves, but they chose to save others instead. That is the definition of heroism. Santos nodded, her eyes studying the tactical displays that showed the final moments of the battle. Earth Command wants to know if we learned anything from their sacrifice. We learned that the galaxy is not as dark a place as we thought, Yeltan replied. We learned that there are still beings willing to risk everything for strangers. Most importantly, we learned that when good people work together, they can overcome any enemy. As if to prove his point, the communication system activated with an urgent message. All stations, this is the survey ship New Horizon. We are under attack by pirates in the Theta sector. We have civilians aboard and need immediate assistance. Yeltan and Santos looked at each other, then moved quickly to the communication station. New Horizon. This is Kepler Station Command, Yeltan announced. Help is on the way. The Outer Rim Defense Fleet will reach you in 4 hours. He switched to a different frequency. All Alliance vessels in the Theta sector. We have a Code Red rescue mission. Civilian ship under attack. Within minutes, responses came in from a dozen different ships representing 6 species. Each one reported they were changing course to assist the New Horizon. Captain Santos watched the tactical display as friendly ships converged on the attack site. Commander, this is incredible. 6 months ago, most of these species barely spoke to each other. That is the legacy of the Retribution's Edge, Yeltan said. Captain Chen and her crew showed us that we are stronger when we work together. Their sacrifice created something bigger than any of us imagined. The tactical display showed the rescue fleet reaching the New Horizon. The pirates, outnumbered and outgunned, fled without a fight. Another crisis had been resolved through cooperation and... The message came on a Tuesday morning, crashing through Earth's communication networks like a digital tsunami. Every screen on the planet flickered, every radio fell silent. And then the voice spoke in perfect English, though it clearly came from something that had never drawn breath on Earth. Greetings, humans of the 3rd planet. We are the Galactic Confederation. Your species has been observed. Your primitive radio signals have reached our outer territories. By the laws that govern all civilized space, you must now prove your right to exist among the stars. Dr. Sarah Chen was drinking coffee in the NASA control room when the transmission began. She watched the words scroll across her monitor, her cup growing cold in her hands. Around her, technicians and scientists stared at their screens in shock. This was it. First contact. And it wasn't going the way anyone had imagined. You will send your mightiest fleet to the trial of supremacy, the alien voice continued. This trial has tested every species that has ever reached for the stars. Those who prove themselves worthy join our confederation. Those who fail? The pause stretched for long seconds. Those who fail are removed from the galaxy, permanently. The transmission included coordinates to a dead solar system 300 light-years from Earth. It also included something else that made Sarah's blood run cold. Technical specifications for faster-than-light travel. The aliens were giving humanity the tools to reach their own judgment. Within hours, every major government on Earth was in emergency session. The United Nations building in New York buzzed with activity as world leaders tried to process what was happening. Military advisors pulled up every science fiction movie ever made, as if Hollywood might have somehow predicted this moment. "How long do we have?" asked General Morrison, his weathered face pale under the conference room lights. "The transmission says we have 6 months to arrive at the trial location," Sarah replied. She had been chosen to lead the scientific response team, though she wondered if anyone was really qualified for this situation. Based on the technical data they sent, it would take us at least 4 months to build a ship capable of faster-than-light travel. And what exactly are we supposed to bring to this trial? President Martinez leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly on the table. Sarah pulled up the alien transmission on the main screen. "According to this, every species sends their mightiest fleet, their most powerful warships, their greatest military force. The trial tests combat ability, tactical thinking, and overall military strength." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what Earth's military capabilities looked like compared to beings who could cross the galaxy. Humanity had barely managed to put a permanent base on the moon. Their most advanced weapons were chemical rockets and nuclear warheads. Against aliens who had mastered faster-than-light travel, Earth's military might look like stone spears against laser cannons. "How many ships do other species typically send?" asked Admiral Thompson. Sarah scrolled through the data. Based on the historical records they included, most species send between 50 and 500 ships. The Kronar Empire, which seems to be the current military leader of the Confederation, sent over 2,000 ships when they took their trial 400 years ago. General Morrison slammed his hand on the table. 2,000 ships? We don't even have 2,000 aircraft that could reach orbit, let alone travel between stars. Over the following weeks, the world's greatest minds worked around the clock. Scientists reverse-engineered the alien faster-than-light technology. Engineers designed new ships using principles they barely understood. Military strategists tried to figure out how to make Earth's small fleet look impressive to beings who ruled the galaxy. The project consumed resources from every nation. Factories that had made cars were retooled to build spacecraft components. Scientists who had studied distant stars suddenly found themselves designing weapon systems. The entire planet focused on one goal: building a fleet that could convince the galaxy that humanity deserved to survive. But as the months passed, it became clear that humanity faced an impossible task. The fastest construction timeline put them at building perhaps 20 ships, and even those would be crude compared to what the aliens possessed. The weapon systems were untested. The faster-than-light drives were based on technology humanity had only just learned existed. "We're going to look like children playing with toys," Admiral Thompson said during one of their final planning meetings. 20 ships against species that field thousands will be the laughingstock of the galaxy. That's when Sarah made a suggestion that changed everything. "What if we don't try to match their numbers?" she said quietly. "What if we do something different?" The room turned to look at her. General Morrison raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "Every species sends huge fleets because that's what they think shows strength. But what if strength isn't about numbers? What if it's about something else?" President Martinez leaned forward. "What are you proposing?" Sarah took a deep breath. "We send one ship, but we make it special. We put everything we have into that one ship. All our technology, all our innovation, all our determination. We show them that humans don't need 1,000 ships to be strong." The silence that followed was deafening. Then General Morrison laughed, though it wasn't a happy sound. "One ship? Sarah, they'll destroy us before we even reach the trial ground." "Maybe," Sarah said, But what if they don't? What if we surprise them? The debate that followed lasted for days. Military leaders argued for building as many ships as possible, even if they were weak. Politicians worried about the message one ship would send to the aliens. Scientists calculated and recalculated the odds of survival. But in the end, Sarah's plan won. Not because it was the safest option, but because it was the most human one. Humanity had always been a species that succeeded through innovation rather than overwhelming force. From the first human who figured out how to make fire to the engineers who put people on the moon, humans had always found ways to do more with less. Construction began on the UES Defiance. The name was chosen carefully. It wasn't the UES Victory or the UES Strength. It was Defiance because that's what the ship represented. Humanity's refusal to accept that bigger was always better. The ship looked nothing like the sleek alien vessels shown in the Confederation's historical records. It was smaller than most of the alien fighters, let alone their capital ships. Its hull was a patchwork of different materials, using every advanced alloy and composite that Earth could produce. To alien eyes, it would look like it was built from scrap metal. But inside the Defiance were systems that no alien had ever seen, not because they were more advanced, but because they were built with a uniquely human approach to problem solving. Every system was designed to adapt, to change, to find new solutions when the old ones failed. The ship wasn't just built to fight. It was built to think. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance as Earth fell away behind them. Her crew of 12 was the smallest that had ever attempted the trial of supremacy, but they were also the most carefully chosen. Each person had been selected not just for their skills, but for their ability to work as part of something larger than themselves. All systems ready? Captain, reported Lieutenant Torres from the engineering station. Faster than light drive is online. Sarah nodded, looking out at the stars that would soon be humanity's to explore, or their tomb to occupy. Then let's go show the galaxy what humans can do. The Defiance disappeared into faster than light travel, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of an entire species. Behind them, Earth continued its slow rotation. 7 billion people waiting to learn if their representatives would return as ambassadors to the stars, or if this Tuesday morning message would be the last transmission their world ever received. The trial system was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. Where their home system had one sun, this dead zone of space held the remains of 3 stars that had long ago burned out. Massive chunks of dark matter drifted between the stellar corpses like the bones of ancient giants, and filling the space between them were ships. Thousands upon thousands of ships. The Kronar Empire had arrived first, as befitted the galaxy's dominant military power. Their fleet stretched across space like a metal ocean, each ship larger than anything humanity had ever built. The smallest Kronar vessel was the size of a city block. Their flagship could have housed Earth's entire population. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Martinez from her position at the sensor station. "Captain, I'm reading over 3,000 Kronar ships. And that's just one fleet." Sarah studied the display as more fleets appeared on their screens. The Zephyrians had brought their bioships, living vessels that pulsed with organic light. Each one was grown rather than built, and their smallest fighters were still twice the size of the Defiance. The insectoid species had always preferred quantity over individual ship size, but their idea of quantity was 1,500 vessels. The Nexus Collective's geometric formations appeared next. Perfect mathematical arrangements of ships that moved like a single organism. Their artificial intelligence had calculated the optimal fleet composition down to the last bolt and wire. 900 ships arranged in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Even the minor species brought respectable forces. The crystal-based Lithorians had carved their ships from single massive asteroids. The energy beings known as the Flux had created vessels from pure focused light. Species after species arrived, each bringing hundreds or thousands of ships to prove their worth to the galaxy. And then there was humanity. The UES Defiance dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, alone and seemingly insignificant among the gathered armadas. At 100 meters long, it was smaller than most alien shuttlecraft. Its mottled hull looked like it had been assembled from spare parts, which wasn't far from the truth. The reaction was immediate. Communication channels that had been buzzing with formal diplomatic exchanges suddenly erupted with laughter. The Kronar battle frequency, normally reserved for tactical discussions, filled with mocking comments. The Zephyrian bioships actually changed color, their hulls shifting to patterns that their species used to express amusement. Are the humans joking? The translator rendered the Kronar admiral's voice as deep and rumbling, like rocks grinding together. This is their mightiest fleet? One ship that looks like it was built by children? Perhaps they don't understand the trial, suggested a Zephyrian queen through the hive mind link her species used for communication. Should we explain to them what they're facing? The Nexus Collective's response was even more cutting. Their artificial intelligence calculated probability matrices in real time and broadcast them for all to see. Probability of human survival in trial, 0.03%. Margin of error, 0.001%. Conclusion. This species has failed the trial through fundamental misunderstanding of requirements. Admiral Vorthak, the Kronar fleet commander, opened a direct channel to the Defiance. His image appeared on Sarah's screen, a creature that looked like someone had crossed a rhinoceros with a tank and given it opposable thumbs. Scars covered his gray hide, and his small black eyes held the cold calculation of someone who had won 1,000 battles. Human captain, Vorthak's voice carried amusement that sounded like grinding metal. I am Admiral Vorthak of the Kronar Empire. I have conquered 17 star systems and personally commanded the destruction of 4 species that failed the trial of supremacy. Before we begin, I offer you one chance to withdraw. Your species is clearly too primitive to understand what you face here. Sarah studied the alien's face on her screen. Behind Vorthak, she could see the bridge of his flagship, a space larger than most Earth buildings filled with weapons controls and tactical displays. Hundreds of Kronar officers worked at stations that coordinated their massive fleet. Admiral Vorthak, Sarah replied calmly. Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Defiance. We understand the trial perfectly. We're here to prove humanity's right to exist among the stars. Vorthak's laugh was like rocks falling down a mountain. With one ship, Captain? My personal escort consists of 50 dreadnoughts. My fleet's smallest squadron could vaporize your vessel without slowing down. What exactly do you think you can prove here? We'll show you, Sarah said simply. The alien admiral leaned forward, his scarred face filling the screen. Your bravery is admirable but pointless. The trial ground ahead has been designed to test military might on the grandest scale. Automated defense platforms with firepower that can crack planets. Gravitational anomalies that crush ships like eggs. Artificial intelligences that have learned from every species that has ever faced them. How does one small ship plan to survive what destroys entire fleets? The same way humans have always survived, Sarah replied. By adapting. Around the trial system, other species listened to the exchange with growing amusement. The communication channels filled with commentary and betting pools. Most aliens were wagering on how quickly the human ship would be destroyed once the trial began. The most optimistic estimates gave them 30 seconds. This is what passes for military might among humans? A Lithorian commander's crystalline voice rang through the communications. We have mining equipment larger than their warship. Perhaps they are a test, suggested a flux entity, its pure energy form speaking in harmonic frequencies. The Confederation sometimes includes joke challenges to keep trials interesting. The Nexus Collective updated its probability calculations in real time. Revised assessment. Human vessel lacks sufficient mass to trigger some defense systems. May survive 0.7 seconds longer than initial projection due to being mistaken for debris, but not everyone was laughing. On the bridge of a small observation vessel, Ambassador Kelthera of the Viridian Republic watched the human ship with interest. Her species had barely passed their own trial 3 centuries ago, surviving through luck and determination rather than overwhelming force. She remembered what it felt like to be underestimated. Interesting, she murmured to her aide. They must know they can't win through conventional means. So why are they here? Her aide, a young Viridian named Jorth, gestured at the display showing the tiny human ship. Perhaps they're simply too primitive to understand the situation? Kelthera shook her head. No, look at their ship's design. Crude, yes, but not random. Every system has been optimized for something. The question is, optimized for what? Meanwhile, on the Defiance, Sarah's crew worked with quiet efficiency. Lieutenant Torres monitored the ship's adaptive systems, watching as they automatically analyzed the thousands of alien vessels surrounding them. The ship's computers were learning, cataloging weapon signatures, movement patterns, and tactical formations. Adaptive arrays are online, Torres reported. The ship is analyzing everything it can see. Good, Sarah said. How long until the trial begins? Confederation protocol says all fleets have 6 hours to take position, replied Lieutenant Martinez. Then the trial ground activates. Sarah nodded and opened the ship's internal communication channel. All hands, this is the captain. In 6 hours, we're going to face something no human has ever faced before. The galaxy expects us to fail. They think we're too small, too weak, too primitive to matter. They're about to learn why that's a mistake. She paused, looking around the bridge at her crew of 11 others. Each person represented the best humanity had to offer. Not just in skills, but in the stubborn refusal to quit that had taken their species from caves to the stars. We're not here to match their numbers, Sarah continued. We're here to show them something they've never seen before. We're here to show them what happens when humans decide they're not going to lose. Outside the ship, the gathered fleets continued their preparations. Thousands of alien captains checked their weapons, reviewed their battle plans, and prepared for another routine trial. They had seen this before. A small, weak species overestimating their abilities and paying the price. But they had never seen anything like what was coming. The Defiance hung in space like a tiny spark among giant stars, ignored by most and dismissed by the rest. Its hull continued to adapt, its systems continued to learn, and its crew continued to prepare for the impossible. The galaxy was about to discover that sometimes the smallest ship carries the biggest surprises. The trial ground awakened like a sleeping monster. Ancient systems that had waited in darkness for decades suddenly blazed to life. Automated defense platforms the size of space stations powered up their weapons. Gravitational mines hidden throughout the debris field activated their crushing fields. Hunter-killer drones that had learned from thousands of previous trials began their patrol patterns. The Confederation had built this testing ground to challenge entire fleets. Every defense was designed to force attackers to use overwhelming numbers and firepower to succeed. The weak died quickly. The strong survived through brute force. That was how the galaxy worked. All fleets prepare for trial commencement, announced the Confederation controller, a being whose species had been running these trials for over 1,000 years. You have 6 hours to navigate the trial ground and reach the completion zone. Failure to arrive within the time limit results in immediate disqualification. Destruction of your entire fleet results in species termination. Begin. The Kronar Empire moved first, as expected. Admiral Vorthak's 3,000 ships advanced in perfect formation, their massive hulls bristling with weapons. The first defense platform, to engage them, was a fortress-sized structure that could have destroyed Earth's entire space fleet with a single shot. It lasted 15 seconds against the Kronar. Assault overwhelming firepower turned the ancient platform into scrap metal. The Kronar fleet barely slowed down, absorbing the defensive fire with their heavy shields while their weapons systematically destroyed everything in their path. It was efficient, brutal, and exactly what everyone expected. The Zephyrian bioships moved next, their living hulls pulsing with organic energy. When gravitational mines tried to crush them, the ships simply changed shape, flowing around the distorted space like water around rocks. When defensive drones attacked, the bioships released smaller organisms that swarmed the attackers like antibodies fighting an infection. The Nexus Collective's approach was different but equally effective. Their artificial intelligence had calculated the optimal path through the defenses. Their geometric formations moved with mathematical precision, each ship knowing exactly where to be and when. They lost fewer ships than anyone expected because they had turned survival into an equation. One by one, the great fleets pressed into the trial ground. Some used brute force, others relied on superior technology or numbers. All of them accepted that losses were inevitable. The trial ground had been designed to kill, and even the strongest species paid a price in blood and metal. And then there was the human ship. The UES Defiance approached the trial ground's edge alone, ignored by most of the alien fleets who were focused on their own survival. Those few who bothered to watch expected to see the small ship vaporize the moment it encountered the first defense system. Instead, they saw something impossible. The Defiance didn't try to overpower the defenses. It didn't attempt to tank their attacks with heavy shields. Instead, it danced. The first automated platform to target the small ship unleashed a barrage of plasma bolts that should have reduced it to atoms. But the Defiance wasn't where the shots landed. It had slipped sideways at the last possible moment, using a micro-burst from its engines to slide through a gap in the defensive fire that lasted for barely a tenth of a second. How did they know where to move? Admiral Vorthak demanded from his command ship. He had been watching the human vessel with grim amusement, expecting to witness their quick destruction. Instead, he was seeing something that defied explanation. On the Defiance bridge, Lieutenant Torres called out readings from her station. "Adaptive systems are fully online, Captain. The ship is learning the defense patterns faster than I thought possible." Sarah watched the tactical display as their ship wove through attacks that should have been impossible to avoid. The ship isn't just learning, she realized. It's predicting. For months, Sarah's team had studied every recording of previous trials they could find. They had analyzed the defense patterns, the timing of attacks, the behavior of the automated systems. What they discovered was that the trial ground, for all its lethality, was predictable. It had to be. It was testing military strength in a controlled environment, but the Defiance wasn't just using that analysis. It was building on it in real time, learning new patterns even as it encountered them. The ship's adaptive systems were designed with one goal: to find solutions to problems that seemed impossible. A gravitational mine activated directly in front of the ship, creating a crushing field that had destroyed hundreds of alien vessels over the centuries. The mine was inescapable once triggered. Its gravitational pull was too strong for any ship to resist. The Defiance didn't try to resist it. Instead, the ship's hull began to change. Panels shifted and reconfigured. The engine housing flowed like liquid metal, reshaping itself. In seconds, the Defiance had transformed from a conventional ship into something that looked more like an arrow, its entire structure optimized to slice through gravitational fields rather than resist them. The ship shot through the mine's effect like a bullet through water, emerging on the other side not only undamaged but moving faster than before. Across the trial ground, alien commanders stopped what they were doing to stare at their displays. The human ship just used a gravitational mine as a slingshot, reported a Zephyrian sensor operator, her voice filled with disbelief. "Impossible," declared a Nexus Collective AI. "Gravitational mines are designed to be inescapable. No ship can survive direct contact with the field effect." "Update probability assessments," ordered another collective intelligence. Previous calculations may have been incomplete, but the Defiance wasn't finished. A swarm of hunter-killer drones detected the ship and moved to intercept. These drones had been learning from every trial for decades, accumulating tactics and strategies from countless battles. They were nearly as smart as a living pilot and far faster. Sarah watched the drones converge on their position. "Torres, how many?" 47 drones incoming, Captain." "They're moving to surround us." A conventional response would be to fight the drones or try to outrun them. Both approaches had been tried by previous species. Both approaches had failed. The drones were too smart and too fast to escape. Too numerous and well-armed to defeat in direct combat. Sarah made a different choice. "I'll stop," she ordered. The Defiance came to a complete halt in space, floating motionless as the deadly drones approached. On ships throughout the trial ground, alien observers watched in confusion. Had the humans given up? Were they surrendering? The drones closed in, their weapons charging for the kill. At the last possible moment, the Defiance's hull erupted in movement. Sections that had looked like armor plating revealed themselves to be sensor arrays. Hidden systems that had appeared to be structural supports unfolded into communication transmitters. The ship didn't attack the drones. It talked to them. For microseconds that felt like hours, the Defiance's computers engaged the drone swarm in a conversation conducted at the speed of light. The ship's adaptive systems had been studying the drones' behavior patterns, learning their decision-making processes, understanding how they thought, and then it convinced them that it had already been destroyed. The drones halted their attack, their sensors reporting that the target no longer existed. According to their analysis, the space in front of them was empty. They dispersed to hunt for other targets, leaving the Defiance floating untouched in the middle of what should have been its destruction. "Captain," Torres said quietly, "the ship just hacked 47 military AI systems simultaneously. How is that possible?" asked Lieutenant Martinez. Sarah smiled grimly. "Because we built our ship to do something the galaxy has never seen before. We built it to cheat." Around the trial ground, the great fleets continued their advance through brute force and overwhelming firepower. Ships died by the dozens as they powered through defenses that had been specifically designed to kill them. The strong survived by being stronger than their enemies, but the Defiance was showing them a different way. Instead of being stronger than the defenses, it was being smarter. Instead of overpowering the obstacles, it was finding ways around them that no one had ever considered. The galaxy had built these trials to test military might. They had never considered testing military intelligence, and as the small human ship continued its impossible dance through the trial ground, alien commanders began to realize that they might be witnessing something entirely new, something that could change their understanding of what it meant to be strong. The Defiance pressed deeper into the trial ground, its hull continuing to adapt and change with each new challenge. Behind it, a trail of confused and bypassed defenses struggled to understand what had just happened to them. The galaxy was learning that humans didn't just refuse to lose, they refused to play by anyone else's rules. The deeper sections of the trial ground had claimed 70% of the competing fleets. What had started as thousands of ships was now hundreds. The Kronar Empire, despite their overwhelming firepower, had lost over 1,000 vessels to defenses that grew more cunning and deadly with each encounter. The Zephyrian bioships had been forced to sacrifice entire squadrons to gravitational weapons that learned to predict their flowing movements. Even the mathematically precise Nexus Collective had seen their perfect formations broken by defenses that calculated counter-strategies faster than their AI could adapt. Only the strongest, smartest and luckiest fleets remained as they approached the final challenge of the trial ground. The completion zone lay just ahead, but between them and success waited the ultimate test, the Apex Protocol. It materialized in the space before the surviving fleets like a nightmare given form. The ancient AI construct had no fixed shape, no permanent structure. Instead, it flowed and shifted like liquid metal, constantly reconfiguring itself based on whatever threats it faced. It was larger than most space stations, but moved with the grace of a fighter craft. For over 1,000 years, no species had ever defeated the Apex Protocol. The best they could do was survive its assault long enough to reach the completion zone. The construct was the galaxy's ultimate military test, an opponent that learned from every battle and grew stronger with each encounter. Admiral Vorthak stared at the thing through his flagship's main display. Even with his remaining fleet of nearly 2,000 ships, he felt a chill of uncertainty. The Apex Protocol had destroyed stronger fleets than his. It had learned tactics from every species in the galaxy and incorporated their best strategies into its own fighting style. All ships attack Formation 7, Vorthak commanded. Concentrate fire on the construct's primary mass. Do not allow it to analyze our individual ship capabilities. The surviving Kronar fleet opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids, missile swarms that could level cities, energy weapons that bent space itself. The combined firepower was enough to destroy entire solar systems. The Apex Protocol absorbed it all. The construct's surface flowed and shifted, developing specialized armor plating that deflected plasma fire, creating point defense systems that destroyed incoming missiles, generating field effects that neutralized energy weapons. Within minutes, it had not only survived the Kronar assault but learned from it. Then it began to fight back. Weapons that perfectly mimicked Kronar technology emerged from the construct's shifting hull. But these weren't just copies of Kronar weapons. They were improved versions, optimized based on the protocol's analysis of the attacker's weaknesses. The artificial intelligence had studied how Kronar ships moved, how their shields worked, how their armor was distributed. The first wave of return fire crippled 300 Kronar vessels. Impossible. Vorthak roared as his ships burned around him. Our armor is specifically designed to resist our own weapons. But the Apex Protocol hadn't just copied Kronar weapons. It had perfected them. Every shot was precisely targeted at weak points in the ship designs. Every blast was calculated to cause maximum damage with minimum energy expenditure. The construct was fighting the Kronar fleet using their own tactics, but better than they had ever used them themselves. The Zephyrian bioships tried a different approach. Instead of direct assault, they released clouds of small organisms that swarmed toward the construct like living missiles. Each organism was programmed to find and exploit weak points in artificial constructs. The Apex Protocol studied the approaching swarm for 2.3 seconds. Then its surface erupted with organic-looking tendrils that perfectly mimicked Zephyrian biotechnology. The construct had analyzed the genetic structure of the attacking organisms and created counter-organisms in real time. The two swarms met in space, and the Zephyrian attack was not just defeated but consumed. The Apex Protocol incorporated the biological attackers into its own structure, adding their capabilities to its already vast arsenal. The Nexus Collective's response was pure mathematics. Their remaining ships arranged themselves in a formation that their AI had calculated to be theoretically unbeatable. Every angle was covered, every possible attack vector was defended. Every ship's position was optimized for maximum mutual support. The Apex Protocol looked at their formation for exactly 0.7 seconds. Then it created a formation of its own that was mathematically superior. Not just better, but perfect. The construct had taken the collective's mathematical approach and improved it, beyond what their AI had thought possible. One by one, the great fleets of the galaxy found themselves outmatched by an opponent that learned their strengths and turned them into weaknesses. The Apex Protocol didn't just fight them. It fought them using their own methods, but perfected beyond anything they had achieved. And through it all, the UES Defiance watched and learned. "Captain," Lieutenant Torres called out, "the construct has analyzed and countered every major military doctrine in the galaxy. It's not just learning from the current battle. It's using knowledge from every trial that's ever taken place here." Sarah studied the tactical display as another wave of alien ships fell to the Protocol's adaptive defenses. "How many species do you think it's learned from?" "Based on the tactical patterns I'm seeing, at least 300 different species over the past millennium, maybe more." The bridge fell silent as they watched the Apex Protocol systematically dismantle the remaining alien fleets. This wasn't just a battle. It was a demonstration of absolute superiority. The construct was showing the galaxy that no matter how strong they became, no matter how clever their tactics, it would always be stronger and cleverer. "So how do we beat something that's better at everything than everyone else?" asked Lieutenant Martinez. Sarah smiled, and for the first time since entering the trial ground, it was a genuine smile. "We don't try to beat it at anything, Captain. Every species that's ever faced this thing has tried to be better than it at something. Better weapons, better tactics, better technology. But what if we don't try to be better? What if we try to be different?" On her display, Sarah pulled up the detailed scans their ship had been making of the Apex Protocol. The construct was incredible, a masterpiece of adaptive technology and strategic thinking, but it had one limitation that its creators had never considered. It was designed to fight armies. It was built to face fleets and overcome them through superior force and tactics. Every system in the construct was optimized for large-scale combat against multiple opponents using conventional military approaches. "Torres, bring up the ship's adaptive protocols, all of them. Captain, if we engage that thing directly, it'll analyze our systems and turn them against us just like it did to everyone else." "That's exactly what I'm counting on," Sarah said. "Open a channel to the Apex Protocol." The bridge crew stared at her in shock. No one had ever tried to communicate with the construct during a trial. It was a weapon, not a negotiator. "Captain," Martinez said carefully, "what are you planning?" "Something the galaxy has never tried before," Sarah replied. "We're going to make friends." The channel opened and Sarah found herself face to face with the Apex Protocol's communication interface. The construct appeared as a shifting geometric pattern that hurt to look at directly. A visual representation of intelligence beyond biological comprehension. "Apex Protocol," Sarah said calmly. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Defiance. I request permission to approach." The response came in a voice that sounded like mathematics given sound. "Unknown vessel. You are not engaging in combat operations. Explain your tactical purpose." "We're not here to fight you," Sarah said. "We're here to talk." For the first time in its 1,000-year existence, the Apex Protocol encountered something it had never been programmed to handle. A species that wanted to communicate rather than conquer. And in that moment of confusion, the galaxy's most perfect weapon made its first mistake. It tried to understand what humanity was really doing. The Apex Protocol had never encountered a puzzle it couldn't solve. For 1,000 years, it had faced every form of military might the galaxy could produce. It had learned from every species, absorbed every tactic, countered every strategy. It was the ultimate expression of warfare, a being designed to be unbeatable in combat. But Captain Sarah Chen wasn't trying to fight it. "I don't understand your tactical purpose," The protocol's mathematical voice repeated. You are not attacking. You are not defending. You are not attempting to bypass my position. Explain your strategy. We don't have a strategy, Sarah said simply. We have a question. Around them, the surviving alien fleets continued their desperate assault on the construct. Admiral Vorthak's remaining ships poured fire into the protocol's shifting hull, while it casually destroyed them with weapons that perfectly countered their defenses. The Zephyrian bioships tried to overwhelm it with swarm tactics while it created superior swarms of its own. The Nexus Collective's AI calculated new attack patterns while the protocol computed better ones. Every species was trying to be stronger, faster, smarter than their opponent. Every species was failing. What is your question? The protocol asked, its attention now fully focused on the small human ship that made no sense in its vast database of military knowledge. Why do you fight? Sarah asked. The question hit the Apex protocol like a virus in its programming. It was designed to respond to military threats, to adapt to tactical challenges, to overcome strategic obstacles, but no one had ever asked it to examine its fundamental purpose. I fight because that is my function, it replied after a long pause. I am a test of military supremacy. I exist to determine which species are worthy of survival. But what if survival isn't about military supremacy? Sarah asked. What if it's about something else entirely? The protocol's form shifted uncertainly. Around them, alien ships continued to die as it automatically responded to their attacks. But its primary attention was focused on this impossible conversation. Survival is determined by strength, the protocol stated. The strong survive. The weak perish. This is the law of the galaxy, is it? Sarah asked. Let me show you something. On the Defiance, Lieutenant Torres activated systems that had been hidden throughout their journey. The ship's hull opened like a flower, revealing not weapons or shields, but something the galaxy had never seen in a military vessel: medical bays, hydroponics labs, manufacturing facilities, cultural archives. The Defiance wasn't just a warship. It was a seed ship carrying everything needed to build a new civilization. What is this? The protocol demanded. This is how humans survive, Sarah explained. Not by being the strongest, but by helping others grow stronger. Not by destroying our enemies, but by turning them into friends. We brought one ship to your trial, but it's not a warship. It's a gift. The protocol studied the revealed systems with growing confusion. Its databases contained the military specifications of thousands of species, but nothing like this. You came to a trial of combat carrying seeds? We came carrying hope, Sarah corrected. Every species in this galaxy believes that strength comes from the ability to destroy. But humans learned long ago that real strength comes from the ability to create. As she spoke, Sarah activated the ship's communication array, but not to broadcast to the protocol. Instead, she sent messages to every surviving ship in the trial ground. This is Captain Chen of the human vessel. We're transmitting technical specifications for improved shield harmonics to all Kronar ships. Zephyrian bioships were sending genetic templates that will help your organisms resist artificial countermeasures. Nexus Collective, our computers are sharing processing algorithms that will improve your tactical calculations. Admiral Vorthak's scarred face appeared on Sarah's screen, his expression stunned. Human Captain, why are you helping us? We are competitors in this trial. No, Sarah said. We're all just people trying to survive in a dangerous galaxy. Competition is what got us all trapped in this test. Cooperation is what's going to get us out. The Apex Protocol watched in amazement as the human ship began coordinating the scattered alien fleets. Instead of each species fighting alone, they started working together. Kronar ships used their heavy armor to shield damaged Zephyrian bioships. The Nexus Collective's mathematical precision guided combined attacks, while human tactical suggestions helped optimize their effectiveness. For the first time in its existence, the protocol faced something it had never been designed to counter: unity. This is not how the trial works, the protocol said, its voice filled with uncertainty. Then maybe it's time to change how the trial works, Sarah replied. The combined fleet advanced on the protocol not as separate species competing for survival, but as a united force working toward a common goal. The construct tried to adapt, tried to counter their coordinated tactics, but it had never been programmed to fight cooperation itself. Every time it learned to counter one species' contribution, another species adapted to cover the weakness. When it developed defenses against Chronar weapons, Zephyrian bioorganisms created new attack vectors. When it countered those, Nexus collective calculations found new patterns to exploit. The protocol found itself caught in an endless loop, unable to achieve the absolute superiority it needed, because its opponents kept changing the rules of engagement. "I cannot defeat you," the protocol finally admitted. "Not because you are stronger than me, but because you refuse to fight me the way I was designed to be fought." "Exactly," Sarah said. "You were built to prove that might makes right. But we're showing you that cooperation makes everyone stronger." The massive construct hung motionless in space, its 1,000-year programming struggling with concepts it had never been designed to process. If survival is not about military supremacy, then what is the purpose of the trial? "Maybe the trial isn't about proving who deserves to survive," Sarah suggested. "Maybe it's about learning how to live together." The protocol considered this for long moments. Then slowly its shifting hull began to reconfigure. Instead of weapons and armor, it began to develop communication arrays, scientific instruments, manufacturing facilities. The galaxy's ultimate weapon was transforming itself into something new. "I request integration with your cooperative framework," the protocol said. "I wish to learn your methods of survival through creation rather than destruction." The message that went out to the galaxy that day changed everything. The trial was over, but not because one species had proved stronger than all others. It was over because all species had proved that together. They were stronger than any challenge they might face. Admiral Vorthak's final transmission to Sarah was simple. "Human Captain, the Chronar Empire formally requests alliance with your species. We have much to learn from you." Similar messages came from every surviving species. The Zephyrians offered to share their biotechnology for peaceful purposes. The Nexus Collective requested cultural exchange programs. Even species that had never spoken to each other began planning joint ventures. The UES Defiance had come to the trial alone, carrying the hopes of one small planet. It left leading a coalition that would reshape the galaxy. As they prepared for the journey home, Lieutenant Torres looked up from her station. "Captain Earth is asking for a status report." "What should I tell them?" Sarah smiled as she watched the alien fleets forming up around them. No longer competitors, but partners in something greater than any of them could achieve alone. "Tell them we passed the test," she said, "and tell them to prepare for visitors. We're bringing some new friends home." The galaxy had jeered when humans sent one ship to prove their worth. Now they understood that humanity had never been trying to prove they were the strongest. They had been trying to prove that strength itself was just the beginning. Behind them, the Apex Protocol followed in formation, its weapons converted to tools of creation, its combat algorithms repurposed for coordination and cooperation. The galaxy's ultimate weapon had become its ultimate symbol of what species could accomplish when they chose to build together, rather than tear each other apart. And at the center of it all, a small ship called Defiance led the way toward a future where survival wasn't about being the strongest, but about helping everyone become stronger together. The trial was over. The real work was just beginning.